Hello everyone. In this video of documentation, we're gonna start learning on Ruby on Rails. So first of all, we're gonna learn some of the basic of Ruby. So Ruby is a programming language which is interpreted and high-level general purpose language, and also it was designed in 1990 by one of Japanese uh, engineer. um, if I'm pronouncing his name correct, Yohiko Mosomoto, something like that. So um, the benefit of Ruby compared to other languages is like Ruby is dynamically typed, so that means is similar to JavaScript, which also has a dynamically typed. It uses garbage collection and also in-time compilation. So in-time compilation is something like if you have use Angular or some other framework, they also have this kinds of just-in-time compilation. It supports multiple paradigms. So in programming language we have different paradigms, right? Imperative and functional, so object oriented. So it has some procedural, object oriented and functional programming. Usually Ruby is considered to be one of the programming language which is fully object oriented. um, so there is a slang goes on, everything in Ruby is object, even your variable is itself is object, like when you say boolean or any data type. So Ruby was mostly influenced by Perl and some of the old language like ADA and Basic and LISP. So currently Ruby has version 3.0, which was released I think last year. Some of the few companies where Ruby is used mainly in GitHub or um, Basecamp. Then I believe GitLab also use Ruby on Rails in their um, in development. So that's bit of history on Ruby. Um, there are a number of frameworks based on Ruby. Ruby on Rails is quite famous. Then the other frameworks is like there is something called Sinatra. We know that this is one of the frameworks, Sinatra. These are the two framework so far I know. There are probably other one, right? So Sinatra is nothing but it's like a very DSL kinds of thing, which is like Kotlin kinds of way. I don't know if it's like Koba or Grep. These are I never use these, so I won't be able to say much. But Ruby on Rails is something very good for the web application development. The another good thing about Ruby is it supports meta programming. So if you know meta programming, so actually this is very good to learn about meta programming. So what does it mean? Like you can run a function or anything from a string itself. um, that's pretty actually good to learn about. So let's get started from basic. So in this video we're gonna use rubylearning.com, a reference website, which I found from actually Ruby documentation. So if you go to Ruby website, rubylanguage.org, and if you go documentation, there is a documentation called Learning Ruby where you can find some details. Let's get started. So we're gonna start with the introduction. So far we had some intro about the background and other things, right? So we won't go much details. So this will be starting point for programmers who have already knowledge about other programming language, because I don't think so Ruby is something you will learn as a first language. And I won't recommend it as well since it's very functional. So this will be probably your second language or third language you want to learn and you want to look into what's there. uh, to be honest, I think the popularity of Ruby is quite declining so far, but I believe that's because other frameworks are like coming up with new concepts. Like Node.js is very popular since everybody knows how to write code in JavaScript. Golang is popular because it's very fast to write some code, and that has some machine level compatibility. So Ruby is mainly popular for web programming, which actually took over by Node.js, but it has some quite good uh, concept, and you can scale it to very large application as well if you really know how to write code. Um, so a basic program in Ruby is something like you can, if you write hello world, right, you can just write puts hello, and that will print the hello. This is a function in Ruby. You use a def and then function name, and you have the end tag. Let's go on installation. So for installation there are a number of way. If you're using Windows machine, so there is something called Windows installer for Ruby. You can download this and that should be it. But I in previously I have seen there are some headache to download Ruby installer for Windows machine. I will drop some link in the comment box uh, for some of the installation method for Windows machine. For Linux or MacBook, if you're using Macintosh or something, it's quite easy. So you for MacBook, usually it comes with Ruby version 2.3 something, I believe. But if you want to upgrade, you can use RBM, which is like similar to your node package manager. So what it does is like if you just use the RBM using your brew or something, then just you can install RBM, install a if you use brew, then RBM you need, and then you can just hit the command RBM install the version of Ruby what you want to do. So I think RPM install L is the latest version, then you can specify a version of Ruby. So I think latest version is 3.0, which you can download, and that will do everything on the download. But it will come along with your bundle and gems as well, gem as well, so which will allow you to download any package also required. um, Usually for editor I would recommend to use VS Code, which is pretty good. Once the installation is done, if you go to your terminal and write IRB, it will give you the Ruby shell where you can write any of the Ruby commands. So you can write puts hi, and this will print the hi. You can define a method also. uh, so if you write this with n, now if you write hi, this will gonna give my name is hi. So this is quite actually handy when it comes to debug some small line of code or something. We're gonna use VS Code for our learning of this series. So let's start with the first program, right? So we're gonna create a folder in our desktop, and if if we open it in our BS Code, BS Code, I'm using BS Code, which you can found in Microsoft website. So you can just download it from this website, and I think there's not much required. So you just click on this and you will have a downloaded version, and you just click and until you install everything. So I will have a so in Ruby file is end with rb, so you can say app.rb. So I'll create this file, and this will be our hello world kinds of thing. So once you have Ruby install on your machine, you can just write your first line of code using this. And to start the code, you can just write ruby app.ruby. So here we have the output. We can hello there. Is hello there. I don't think so we have any extension for Ruby in VS Code. Let's see. Okay, so there is one I have already installed. So I believe that would be helpful for syntax highlighting and everything. Yep, should be okay. So let's see what next. So this is our first hello world code we have finished, right? So let's read about some notes. So Ruby is a scripting language. There is no special main method in Ruby which execution beginning. Ruby interpret as the script of statement. So what does it mean? Like it doesn't have any main method. It begins with the execution first line of the. So what it does is like it always will gonna start from first line. So if we say 1, 2, 3, 4, and if we just print out, we'll see 1, 2, 3, 4 as like in a sequence. So let's go on the feature on Ruby. So Ruby is free format, so it's like you can start your code any line, any place, any column. It's case sensitive, so in Ruby puts and puts are two different things. If you write here something and you see that it will gonna say that you mean put C or something. So basically this doesn't recognize this line of code, so it's case sensitive. So even if you have a method called hi there, and if you have another method called hi there, these two are totally different method. Okay, so if you write something capital letter, small letter, this will be independently recognized. Comments is something you start with hash sign. So if you want to comment out which is this, you can start. If you want to comment out this line, you can start like this. So in this way this will never get printed. You can comment whole thing and this will never get executed. So we can test it out. So we have only 1, 2, 3, 4, so this line never print out. Delimiter. So Ruby doesn't require a semicolon or anything. It execute from the syntax. So you can I'm not sure if you write this way it should still execute. So if you see syntax error, so you always have to make sure that you end your line. Indentation doesn't matter for Ruby, just to note. It's not like Python where you have to do the indentation properly, but for syntax to understandable and everything, make sure that you indent your code properly. So but again, so if you want to write something like this, you make sure you add a semicolon, which like semicolon delimiter. I believe that's something you can do. Yep, that works. But try to write something like this so it's more readable, I think. Other than that, there are some keyword reserved in Ruby. So there are 42 of them, I believe. So the keywords are, you can find here. So the line, file, begin, end, these are keyword. So if you declare a variable called ls or end or and, it will throw a exception. So we cannot do that. So you can see the list is here, case, else, if else, something like that. These are reserved word for Ruby. um, okay, so there are Ruby has something very unique. It has some naming convention in Ruby. So if you declare a variable, um, okay, we're gonna discuss it when we come to variable. So just for reminder, right, it has some naming convention for different things. So it doesn't use camel case, it use something called underscore. So if we have something, we want to name a variable called username, we can either write username or username first name is something we write with the underscore, so it doesn't use your camel case. Like in other programming you will write probably username, something like that. So Ruby use this kinds of formatting. When you're gonna learn about Rails, you're gonna know more about convention, like how to declare a model name, database name, method name, or something like that. So let's go on to the next one. So in numbers are something in Ruby what you do use for normal purposes. So for example, okay, this is for multi-line of comment. Okay, so if we just put it here, if we see is like begin and end, and in between whatever we gonna write is comment out. So in Ruby we can do all the mathematical operation, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 multiplied by 2 is 6, 3 multiplied by 2 is 1.5 something, I believe. So we can just copy this whole line and see how it works. um, so we see 2 plus 1 is 3, I believe. 3 multiplied by 2 is 6, 3 multiplied by 2 is um, okay, this is 3 multiplied by 2 is supposed to be 1.1, but it Ruby recognizes as an integer, so the remainder doesn't come. I believe there are some way to do it. So if you uh, add point 0 or something, I believe this will help. Yeah, so 1.5. There is other way also, I believe, to do it. So this is one way to solve this problem. Subtraction is 1 minus 1, 10 minus 11. 1.5 by 2 is quite fairly, we know that. And I believe there is number of field which after decimal point we can add. Other than that, we have to use like similar to big integer or big number, something, big floating point value. So just for understanding, right, so everything you define in Ruby is object. So everything is defined from your basic object is like object, and after that it has module, class, array, numeric hash, regex, string, and your numeric value has integer, big number, and floating point. You can define integer like normal integer which we have like this integer. Big number is something, I believe, point 1, point 2. Floating point is like if you have floating point, some extended number. So floating point is something, IEE, that is specific format of floating point. So that's something, I believe. um, so other than that, in Ruby operators are like so this square bracket is a kind of like um, when you use array or something, I say elements of set. um, so double asterisk is exponential. So exponential, what I mean is, like, if you have something 2 to the power 3, what you gonna do? So you can write 2 3. So we can test it out here. You say um, this is the number. What else? So we just now we see addition, subtraction. We have some other operator, right? Um, uh, so modulars, and then this is also, like, I think not operator. Yeah, so this is shifting and operator, then your less than, greater than operator. So this is your comparison operator. So when you're gonna learn about condition or something like that, you're gonna use this conditional operator, comparison operator. um, this is and this is or operator in Ruby. So if you have something x equal to 2 and x equal to 3, something like that, that's an invalid point, I think. Whatever. So it also support logical negation. So instead of not like this, you can just write not. That was then unless, while, until, these are expressional operator, and begin and int, like, is a when you start a block. So block is something we will learn later in Ruby. We have something called block as well. So let's test this out, how it works, and explain one by one. So this is modulars, because 5 modulus 3 is something, when you divide 5 by 3, the remainder is 2. So this is how we know. But if we have a negative, we will have this 1, because uh, it try to do the modulus on 5, and to be 6 is it required 1, and in this case it returned -1, and in this case it returned -2. I believe this is quite understanding if you understand normal basic mathematics. um, okay, difference between and or operator. So if you see um, this line of code, so nil or 2018 and false and 2018 and Ruby and 2018. Okay, so if we print it out, we're gonna see something magic here. So on the first line of code, nil or 2008 will print 2008, but false, and this is, let's say, is true, that's mean 2008. But in this case, if you have a string, it put Ruby itself. So the explanation is both or and written the first argument unless it's a false. Okay, or and this or, but in case the value is evaluated to return the second argument, this is the shown in the following example. So this is a false value, this is a false value, but in this case Ruby is evaluated as true, which is a string, so it's return a true value. um, the variable. Okay, so this is something you can always use. This is used lots of time. So if you declare a variable, by the way, when you have a at the rate before a variable is considered as a instant variable. So there are 3 types of variable in Ruby, I believe. There are some. Give an example. Let's give some example. uh, so in Ruby we have the scope of variable, right? Let's see some documentation. So we have a global variable using this, which is accessible all around the code. Instant variable is just now we saw something like this. A local variable is something you start with your a to z or with underscore. A constant variable is something you start with any value or something with a capital letter, and a class variable is something is you start with double at the rate. So when you learn about class or method something, we this will be very helpful. Okay, so where you was. So in this case, we can write something variable is defined. If the variable is not defined, then we use the default value. Okay, it's more convenient way to write in a single line is like you first write this or, and then use the equal. So these two are similar, same type line of code. um, Next is conditional. So a equal to f of x and b equal to f of y and c equal to then d equal to g f y something. So this is similar to if you write a condition, right? A if a equal to b, b equal to c and c equal to d something, then d equal to a, you can define a g function which will gonna have a b c, then you end the function. So yep, I believe this is a bit complicated, so you can ignore as of now. When you're gonna learn about condition and other things, this will be useful. So we can see that if we print the variable here, right, um, uh, we'll see that variable will come default value. But in if we had declared this variable here before, now it will be high there. So that's how the instant value and then or what. These are something uh, you can understand, right? So when g with the argument, what it does is accept more than one parameter. So it's like split. The split here says that accept one or more argument in this form of an array. This return an array as well. Okay, so the f function is argument, um, and xyz true false something parallel assignment something like that, which will gonna x will have a true, y will get true, z will get the false value. And if a equal to fx, so which is like this line of code, a equal to fx and b equal to c equal to, and then what we do is like we define the d as g of abc, which is this function, and f function is this which is we pass here. So f of a argument will gonna return the argument itself, which is true. So our a variable we define somewhere probably, and b equal to f of y, c equal to, so we say like a equal to arg of, so it will return the argument whatever we pass x. Then b value is equal to y and c equal to z. So if we are using this function, it will return an array and store the variable into d. Okay, so that's a lot of, I think, theory. Let's start with the string now. So in Ruby string we can just define like this, so which we have seen example I believe just now. So if you write this hello world, we can add a variable here also. So what we can do is like we can just write like this, and we can put this variable also, and hello world, this will come hello world right there. So this is how we concat in Ruby. We can use the plus sign also, so something like this, which also works. um, if you do something like this, what you're gonna do, it will print this hello 3 times, so something like this. We can add a space here, and that will gonna have some space. Pi is a constant value in Ruby, so we can just write puts um, sorry, I have to define it. So if you have something like this, you can define like this, so that works. uh, so okay, frozen string literal, what does it mean? So if we put a pass object that is not a string, puts call to string method or something, blah blah blah. So let's say you have a object, right? And if you put, it will gonna print out the object reference of that object. But to, if you want to do the string, you can put 2s, we're gonna do everything as a stringify. You can, if you say JSON, then you can put you can write to JSON, something like that also. um, so for example, if you put dr is something, oops, so where did I wrong? I think we need to import this, I believe. It's worth knowing that special kind of string edges using tick grape accent call the us the beginning and the ending. I'm not sure. Dir doesn't have in Linux, so I think ls is the one. Yep, so in ls, yeah, because I'm using Linux, so that's why it's ls, so it's similar to ls command here. We can write cat. I'm sure that will work or not. So if we write this, does it print? Mm, not sure. So it just get in this, but I think it works something like that. So it's like a command line or something. So it will, you can just write system tar xyz something. This will run as a bash command in the command line. Okay. The variable assignment. So whatever we have used so far, right? We just put some data, but here if you see, we assign this value into a variable, so that's called variable assignment. So here we are assigning a variable value like hello world to a value called string. Since at the beginning we have mentioned that Ruby is dynamically typed. So what I mean is, let's say we have this s equal to hello world, right? If we put s, and we say like 10 and puts s, so we're gonna see that both values are printed. But if you have um, tried it in other programming like Java or C, then it will gonna throw a exception that s is type of string, you have to previously type string, something like that, right? Ruby is doesn't need that. It will dynamically convert this data type of this variable. um, okay, so if you have a string, right, this is something interesting. So if we have something like this, let's say 2 plus 2, if you see, it will gonna throw exception, right? But we can say to something like convert into integer, and 2 plus 2 is 4. Or we can also do s to convert the string, and this will gonna convert this thing to string 22. So it will just append these 2 and 2, so that's how it works. What else? Uh, okay, so this is something, if you want to write a multi-line of string, right, you can try that. I believe this is something kind of oops. I think it doesn't support in Ruby version 3. So previously it was, but what you can do is like you can do something like this in and if you print a, I'm not sure. So this something should work. Let's see in the future. So we go to scope. So scope is nothing. We just now we talked about, right, in here. So the variable scope is something you probably will gonna be asked in some interview question. So we have like global scope, which we define a variable. We have a local scope. In local scope we have this class variable, um, a class variable, and also we have this method instant variable. So when you gonna learn about class and module, we gonna learn about local scope, but global scope is something we always write global. So this is some people prefer to write like this. You can also write something like this. This is not global, but some people also define like this. So both are okay, but prefer to for global prefer to use this way. So this is available in the whole program. Getting input. So you can get input from the user, right? So something like this is very useful. So let's say we want to get some data from user. So you can which city you stay. Let's say I write Singapore. So then you can print out this whole thing city. Uh, so I say Singapore. You say your city is Singapore. That's quite um, uh, good way to get data from user. Um, okay, so this is the naming convention. Just now we have seen, right? A local variable will always start from either underscore a to z some data. Instant value variable always start with a at the rate. A class variable will always have a double at the rate, and object and class variable rarely used in Ruby program. So global variable is like a dollar sign, something like this. So you have a counter or something. Just now I explained like capital letter. Constant name start with the uppercase letter. So for example, if you have a constant variable, you're gonna do something like this. Method name is always a underscore. If it's a boolean, you can use something like question mark. So method name should begin with lowercase letter underscore. So this there are some sign equal widely character use of method as a suffix to able to label as are dangerously specifically blah blah blah. So there is something called bang method. We're gonna learn about later this thing. um, uh, let's see, I mean for now. So if we have a string, we can write hello, right? But we pass an argument, we pass the name. So this is like a method in Ruby method. So we have a method called hello, and we start with df and end with n. So we can have number of method like this, right? And if we call this like this, let's see, let's comment on this line. Now we can define so many things, right? Hello, 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 right? What it'll do, it will always return the last line of code in Ruby. Just remember, In Ruby method is you write the method name before div, and then it will return the last value, right? You can always put here, but if I write puts here, then it will return a undefined, because this push diff method doesn't return anything. But if I return like this, it will return this hello value, okay, and it will end with this. So we can, if we run this puts hello, you see that okay, to identify this, we can call this hello method. So you see that it returned this hello. So hello name of this method. We can just supply this here. So it will return this method name. Wait, this doesn't work. I believe this dot name, I believe, will work. So let's not do it. So this will also work. So name of the method, okay. So it will print hello 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 3 times, and then it will return this name of the method, and we should gonna print here. Now if we do this, we can put number of time, and it will do the same thing in number of time. We can do another way also, I believe. If we just multiply by 3, it will do everything 3 times already. Yeah, so 1 time, 2 time, 3 time. Other way is like dot times something. I believe there should be a method like times then 3 something. I'm not sure this will work. Nope. So this is another way. I believe there is some method in Ruby called times 3 something like that. So which we can see later also, no worries. This is how we pass a value in the method. What I mean is, let's say you have this method called pass value, and you want to pass a param. You can n, and you can print this parameter, and you can pass this hi method let's say HE we are passing, right? So we pass the HE, and then it went to this method name, and it passed then HE. So we can pass anything like here, right? So to print out, yeah. So method, and then this. Okay, so what else? We can pass with the bracket or without the bracket. It will also work. We can pass n number of parameter here. Parameter 1, parameter 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So this work as well. So 1 2. Let's see. So this is the default value when you want to pass any default value. So this way the default value will gonna pass even though we don't pass anything. So first method you don't pass anything, it will pass all the three. Second value we pass the Ruby as first parameter stop debia, so it will print the other two as a default value, shashank, and debia will gonna replace it by this Ruby. Okay, so what else? This is like a normal I believe a normal alias. We can alias a method name with different name. So old empty the old method, and then old method to new method alias with, and then we call this old method old improve method, and then old method new method. So when we write old method is like improve method and old method. So that's quite interesting with alias we can do. And this is something interesting, right? So we can do pass a asterisk before the variable, and in that way it will take n number of parameter as a and this will take as a array. So when we have the foo, we can pass foo with comma separated value, and when print foo it will gonna take it as an array. So that's quite interesting. So here we have a, x, and b. So in that way we can pass a as a variable method, x as a n number of, and it will take the last element as a b. Okay, these are normal method like to make the downcase or uppercase. Okay, so this is the bank method we was talking about here, right? So bank method is nothing but, let's say you want to conditionally do anything, right? So for example, you want to have a method called is integer or something like that, right? Is value is integer, or how about okay, so let's say in real time you have a user, we shall gonna need to know that if the user is active or not, right? So what you can do to make it understandable, right? So your method name will be is active, and you can pass a question, and then you're gonna pass the user object, right? And you can say end method, right? You can return true or false whatever condition you have. So this way user always know this will gonna return a true or false, something like that. So there are other way also to do that, like sort or uppercase lowercase. So these are the thing. Yeah, so this something question mark especially Ruby. How about the conversion method? Return a value, answer question. So is empty method or something true or false. So yep. So these are just defining some variable, some float value. So float dot max, we can say that this is a very huge number we can define. Okay, so I was talking about times, right? So I think 64 times, and then we have a root, right? So this is something interesting. So what it does is like this one return a array, I believe. Yeah, so this will return an array, but to print this value we can write a loop. I believe we have an here
It's 1 o'clock.
learnable loop. Sorry for that. I think we can end here since it's going a long video. So on the next video we're gonna learn more about the Ruby methods and everything. So that's it for this Ruby learning. See you on the next video.